Welcome to our Toxic Parents book club. One thing I forgot to tell you guys last week was we were going over codependency, right? And we went through the whole checklist of all the codependent points. Is that if any of you are interested in the Vedic psychology viewpoint of codependency, we actually made an e-course on that, where you can hear Babaji how he talks about codependency. It's on our website, and I totally forgot to mention it until after. It's on the Vedic Psychology Institute website. It's called Codependency Karma. So you can check that out if you want to learn more about kind of how we see codependency. Okay, so now we're at the top of page 40. Our friend Melanie. So she answered yes to every single statement. All 12 statements, she said yes to them. She was astounded to see how truly codependent she was. To help her begin to break out of these patterns, I told her it was essential that she make the connection between her codependency and her relationship with her father. I asked her to remember how she had felt when he cried. At first it really scared me because I thought Daddy was dying. And then who would be my daddy? Then I started feeling ashamed to see him that way. But mostly I felt this terrible guilt that it was my fault because I had picked a fight with my brother or whatever, like I'd really let him down. The worst of it was that I felt so helpless because I couldn't make him happy. What's amazing is he's been dead for 4 years and I'm 42 years old. I've got 2 kids of my own and I still feel guilty. That's the power of a samskara, you know. Doesn't matter how old you are, you will be on your deathbed and you will take whatever samskara has not been healed to your next life as well. It will determine your life. It will determine the life you get, the body you get, and all that. So these samskaras are so powerful. And that's why, you know, she's like, I can't believe I'm 42 and I'm still feeling this. The thing is that when that original feelings, when those original samskaras were made and she has this intense feeling of guilt, right? You know, that it's her fault that, you know, maybe she did something to make her dad cry like that. Remember, he had a meltdown in the bedroom, having a crying fit, you know? So she thinks it's her fault. And it doesn't matter that all the years are passing by and now she has her own 2 kids. She still has those original childlike feelings that it's her fault. And then she gets in relationships with people. What types of people do you think she'd pick? If that's her, like, one of her core patterns, that it's my fault, I'm the one who made you upset. What types of people would she pick, do you think? Vilas?
People who like to blame.
Yes, that's who she's going to fall in love with. People who like to blame, who don't take any responsibility. So her father's having the full meltdown in the bedroom, right? So then she's thinking, oh my God, it's my fault. And he's confirming that it is. Even though he may not say it's your fault, but she feels like, oh, I shouldn't have had the fight with my brother. You know? So she's going to find people who in some way like to blame, either directly, like they'll just blame, or who are so emotionally unstable that they can't take responsibility for their part. So there's 2 ways it could be. Either they like to blame or they can't take responsibility. One way or the other, it won't be that they can ever acknowledge what they're putting her through, really. And she likes it, unfortunately. I mean, she doesn't really like it, but that's what she knows. That's her comfort zone. That's who she'll be attracted to. The one who's either so emotionally unstable that she feels that very familiar discomfort of it being her fault. And then what is she going to want to do? You know, she was trying to save Daddy, you know? So now she's going to try to save that other person. And how it looks as an adult in codependency is you're not really trying to save, you're trying to fix their feelings. You're trying to do something so they won't be crying anymore, they won't be mad at you anymore, they won't be whatever they're feeling towards you. Like you can just feel their anger, you can almost feel it. You can, you know, the more your parent was like that as a child, the more you absorbed and you became very, very good at picking up on any slight discrepancy in their feeling. So if they're not feeling happy with you, they're not feeling peaceful, you might even know the sound of how their footsteps are when they're upset, or the look in their eye, their one little eyebrow goes up, or the particular type of food they eat. You're going to notice every little micro movement they do. So you can catch it before it gets too bad. Before maybe he hits you or throws you down the stairs, before he hurts himself, which could happen, before he fill in the blank of what he does, but whatever he does is toxic, is very hurtful to you. So you're going to try to stop it, stop that as a kid, so you become hyper attuned to that person. And then imagine as an adult, you look like you're so compassionate and you're so caring and but really you're just trying to protect yourself. So then when there's somebody maybe in a group who's very angry type or very, blaming, then you're like, okay. And then you try to, appease them. You say, it's okay, and I'm sorry, or you don't have to be, or you don't say anything at all, but you do something to not upset that person who's already upset, So you kind of contort yourself however you can. And if you're the timid Thomas type, you just withdraw your legs and your head in the shell, You don't say anything at all. You're just like, oh, I hope this passes soon. If you're the more Rajasic type, the rambling Rajas, you're going to try to say something to them and get them to stop it, but somehow you are going to do something to try to fix that person's feelings. And that's a losing proposition. It never works. And it's exhausting. It is so exhausting when you're trying to get somebody else to change how they feel. It's really a full-time job to even manage our own feelings half the time, right? But then now there's somebody else who's emotional. And it's like, oh my God, by the end of the day, it's like, and then you get known like that in your family, in your community, that you're the one who can take care of other people's feelings. You're the one who will never push back, who will never say no. You're so agreeable. If you become that type, you can end up becoming depressed from that, because it's so heavy that you're taking care of everybody else's feelings and you're ignoring your feelings and your needs, So this codependency thing is quite heavy when you really look at how pervasive it is if you have that problem in your life. It's in all your relationships, the way you show up. So this is what she was saying about how she felt, when her dad was doing that. Having his meltdown and crying, and then that she's 42 years old and that samskara is still there, alive and well. And the other thing I didn't say about the samskara, right, which is the impression that was made when her father acted like that in her subconscious mind that she's not aware of. All she's aware of is, I still feel that way and I'm 42, but what we call it more precisely is it's her samskara of feeling guilty because her father was having that out of control crying meltdown, right? So every time now in her adult life, since then, just say that happened when she was 8, now she's 42. For all those years, every time she was in a situation where her father acted like in some way emotionally unstable, or her husband, or her boyfriend, or fill in the blank of the emotionally unstable person having a meltdown, that makes that original samskara stronger. It fortifies it. It makes it stronger and stronger. So imagine how much guilt she must have now. So the original samskara that got made, let's say she was 8 and her dad had the first crying meltdown that made that deep first samskara. Now, if she had a healthy family, that very same day, she would talk to her mother and say, Mom, I felt so guilty, I felt so bad because Dad had this crying meltdown and I thought it was my fault. And the mom would say, oh, honey, you should have never seen that. I'm so sorry that you had to be exposed to Dad acting like that. He was having an off day, but that's not your fault. It's not your problem. I'm going to talk to Dad for you, okay? Because I don't want him to put his emotional problems on you. And if you have a fight with your brother, guess what? That's normal. That's what kids do. That's how they learn how to socialize. So I don't like it that you guys are fighting, but it's not, that should not have been what you think made Dad have the full meltdown crying. Then she would talk to the father and say, that's not acceptable. You should have never exposed her to that. That made her feel very unsafe. It made her feel guilty. It's going to make a deep impression in her, and she's not going to understand how to have healthy human relations. And now I want you to come to the two of us together and apologize to her. You have to own your part, and you have to not do that again. And you need to learn how to take care of your feelings and not put them on her. That should have all happened that night. Then the samskara would have been digested. Then, when she's 42, she wouldn't be feeling like that. When she saw someone with emotion, that samskara would have been digested if they stuck to their word and the dad took care of his feelings and didn't dump them on her, and the mom protected, and he could behave himself, and maybe he needed therapy, probably did, that's fine. But if they took care of it in an emotionally mature way, and she felt safe, and it was kind of like a one-off, and they talked about it, and he didn't do it again, then the samskara would have been digested. And then when she saw somebody as an adult doing that, okay, so now imagine she's with the boyfriend, and he's having an emotional, complete meltdown, just like Dad did when she was 8. But remember, if the samskara is digested, how do you think she'd respond? If she's, let's say, 35, she has a boyfriend, and he's throwing himself and crying and all upset, how would she respond if the original samskara got digested. Kamala?
Be carried away by the emotion of the boyfriend or husband, and she will be able to keep her balance and see the situation as it is. Means, okay, I can maybe have some empathy for him. I understand that he has this problem, but not only cognitive, but also like real empathy, so that she will try to help him, but not overwhelmed by the situation.
Good. You want to add something, Nancy?
Yeah, I think that would be what Kamala said.
Yeah.
I would agree, and maybe she will be able to co-regulate the other person.
I can't hear very well. The air conditioner is really loud, and that's the same problem as last week. Can somebody please turn up the speaker? Can you say it again?
I said that the only thing I would add is that maybe she would be in a position where she can co-regulate the other person.
Okay, that's her job?
No.
Oh. Try again. Jaya, pass the book. No codependent answers here allowed.
Well, I already wanted to reply when Kamala spoke. I don't know if she will be interested in doing that, because if she had digested her samskara, I think that she would just take a distance from him and
exactly,
slowly move
Bingo.
away.
She would say he's not emotionally mature. He's got a problem, just like my dad did. And I remember when I was 8, when my dad did that thing, Mom told him he needs help. He shouldn't dump his feelings on me, and he should go to therapy, and he did. So she has the mechanism, like the other part of her original samskara has that her mom stuck up for her, that her dad apologized. So now she knows how to stick up for herself. And she would be like, yeah, she'd be nice, but more from a distance and say, Haribo, and best of luck. And, because that's too much. It shouldn't all be dumped on her like that, So she would say, oops, she would have been almost trained or programmed by her parents that, how you learn who not to be, it's not safe for her in that. So she would take distance, and maybe she would, see him as a friend or something, but she wouldn't tell him he needs to go to therapy or anything. She would have learned that that's probably not a safe person for me, and I don't want to end up with somebody who's like my dad, that I have to caretake again. You see what I'm saying? That's the difference. This empathy and, I feel I want to help him and co-regulate, those are all the trauma responses of what you probably had to do for your parent. But the healthy response is to realize, whoops, reel it back in, not my job to take care of him. And I'm not talking about just say his mother died and he's crying. That's a different thing, okay? Obviously, if you're with a long-term partner, they're gonna have feelings. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in the way that her father did it, which was a really inappropriate, over emotional response about nothing. And that he couldn't talk to her about it, and he couldn't, and if there's a pattern of that, there might be a one-off, but that's the idea. Then she would go, okay, this is a red flag. And she would know it because of how the other parent, so the dad had the problem in this case, and the mother was not codependent in our ideal world, and she'd say, zip, no. And she would talk to her, she would talk to the father, they would heal it right there and then, And then that samskara is a whole different kind of samskara. The original wound happened, but it was healed right there and then when the other healthy parent stepped in, took care of her, told the dad what to do, and said, you need to go get help or whatever, and then she's like, oh, okay. So then it wouldn't be a big wound. So my point is that a lot of what happens in our adult life, what we're reacting to when we're having a very strong emotional overreaction to something, a disproportionate emotional reaction to something, is a direct indicator of an unhealed childhood wound, an emotional trauma. So that's how you see it, and you go, why is that person reacting so strongly to that? Because there's an unhealed trauma that they don't see, and it's causing them to act like the 5-year-old or the 3-year-old. And sometimes it's not always negative. Sometimes if somebody's really nice, it's another trauma that they had to be Mr. Nice Guy, a yes man, So it's not always what we think, but it's when somebody's acting to something, it can be a sign of that. Because the other parent didn't step in, or caregiver, just somebody who was healthy and say, no. Because usually what happens is the whole reason the couple works is, like I was saying last week, one of them is one of them is maybe the really emotional one, and the other one's the one calming the emotions. One of them's the abuser, and one of them is the enabler. One of them's the aholic, like alcoholic, workaholic, and the other one is the one who lets that happen, who makes it possible. So they're a perfect match. So it's very rare that you're going to find a case where you're going to have a father who acts like that, having an emotional meltdown, throwing himself on the bed, and the mother who would step in and go, oh, he has a problem, and take care of the child perfectly, and then make the father apologize, and he would do it from his heart. That is I'm making it up like a Hollywood movie ending of a happy ending. It doesn't happen. So if you're hearing this and going, well, my parents never did that, probably not, because that's not possible usually. They won't be attracted to each other. The healthy person wouldn't pick the one who acts like that. So the reason why I'm saying the scenario of how it should be is because you have to understand the healthy thing, how it should be, and then you have to do it for yourself when you're triggered. That's the whole trick of when I say working with your inner child. That's what you have to do. You have to realize this isn't okay, and this is related to that time when I was 8 and my father did that, and now my boyfriend's doing that, and it's not okay. So you don't have to tell him anything, the boyfriend, but you have to take care of your inner child who's still triggered and feeling guilty, feeling like it's my fault. You have to talk to your inner child and say, okay, I see you're feeling really, really guilty right now, like it's your fault, and you want to be compassionate and help this guy, but it's not your job. It wasn't your job to help Dad, and it wasn't your job to help this guy, and I have to take care of you now. So I'm going to remove you from this triggering situation and let him figure himself out, because he's a full-grown man. You know, so you have to do it for you. That's why I'm giving the example of what the ideal mother would have done. You know, but it's not now about going back to your mom and being like, remember that time Dad did this thing? You should have stepped in and done this, and then I wouldn't have this trauma. That's going to get you nowhere than a big blow up in your face. You know, the parents did what they did because they were acting on their traumatic samskaras of how their parents treated them. You know, and it's not their job now to fix it. Even if you go and you say, Mom, you did that, and you should have done this instead. Great. Maybe she might agree with you. You know, on a really good day, maybe she'd agree with you and not get defensive, but then what? It doesn't have anything to do with your samskara, which was created way back then, that you have to go in almost like a scuba diver, going underwater, going through all the weeds and the seaweed and all the shells, and you have to find the thing, and you're going to know how it's going to look. Why? Because you're going to feel it. They can't feel your feelings for you. You have to go in and you have to feel it, and you have to go, oh, ow, 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 that's it. And then you have to hold it up, and you have to hug it, and you have to love it, and you have to say what you needed to hear all those years ago. That's the only way. And once you understand that and you experience that, then you're not relying on other people anymore. Then somebody acts in a certain way that's, you know, upsetting to you, and you go, oh my God, I feel so bad for that person. I really feel bad for them that they're hurting. You know, whenever you see bad behavior, that's what's a sign of. It's a sign of a hurting inner child, somebody who's hurt and who doesn't realize it. I mean, this knowledge Babaji has given us about samskaras, it's really like X-ray vision into the psyche that Western psychology doesn't have. So when you can see it that clearly, that alone should give us compassion. For ourselves, when we're not at our best, to say, whoops, I got a samskara I didn't even realize there. Or for other people, when we see them kind of misbehaving, we have to go, oh wow, they probably have some samskaras they're not aware of at all. And that's why they only think, it's you, it's you, it's you, and you're like this and that. They're not seeing it because they're wounded. And some people are too wounded to ever want to see it. They know the knowledge exists, but they don't want to see it because it's too painful. And for that, I have a lot of, you know, compassion for that. Just think of whatever the thing is that you would least want to deal with in your life. For me, it's needles. I just can't, I still have a phobia of them. I don't like them. I have to do a whole thing to calm myself down to get an injection or to have my blood taken, you know? I have to do a whole procedure. I'm not really okay with needles. Who knows what happened? Probably in a lot of my past lives, but I really have a phobia that I'm getting better at, but I'm not 100% with it, you know? And so now if somebody told me, I want you to go to the hospital, I want you to get like needles stuck in you for 1 hour, and also you should, I mean, I know you're a psychologist, but why don't you try to become like more like a surgeon? Why don't you full-time like cut people open? Wouldn't that be fun? You cut people open and like look at the blood. I would faint. I just can't do it. I don't think ever in this lifetime I could do it. I have a very sensitivity to like needles and blood and cutting and all that. So that's my thing. So now, how would I feel if people are trying to tell me, you should look at the needles and go get them stuck in your arm and go cut people. It's fun for us. Can I show you? Look, isn't that cool? You're going to be totally triggered. So that's how it is when we ourselves, if you are into this toxic parents thing, but you're insensitive to others who are not, That's how it can be triggering, because you want to talk to them about it. Maybe it's your mother or your sister or your brother or your friend. You want to tell somebody about it because you're like, oh, listen, did you know this is because of this? It's a samskara. Did you know? And dad was so abusive, he's an alcoholic. Probably your family's not even going to agree with that, you know, and it's going to be very hurtful. It's going to fracture your relationship with them, you know. So this knowledge is really for the people who are ready to hear it, and it's not everybody. It's not everybody. So you have to use it for yourself, and you're here for you. That's why I was saying before with this Vedic psychology, it's super powerful. It will give you X-ray vision if you can really digest what I'm teaching. But you use it for yourself. Turn the X-ray vision, turn the camera here and go, ooh, I got a samskara in me. Whoa, look at that ahankara in me. Not to try to get someone else to change for your pleasure, so they're not so obnoxious or annoying. You know, we have to really think differently and say, I'm here for me. I'm here to improve myself. And for me, I have so much, I just feel so grateful that Babaji taught us this, and that there's people who are interested in learning and who can have their heart open to hear it, because that's a rare person as well. You know, the finest, most pristine knowledge, the least people can get it, right? It's and especially this particular knowledge, because you have to bring yourself, and it feels so exposing. Whatever you're most insecure about, let's take that and highlight it. Welcome to Vedic psychology. It's so like, so much shame can come, feelings of shame, anger, hatred, just whatever your worst feelings are, we have to get those up. They're on the bottom of the pit, and we have to get it all up and out for you to be clean and feel happy and sattvic, right? But the process is, you can't do the Western approach, okay? Like when you need something done, you just, like, I need this tooth removed. Just give me an injection. I don't want to feel anything. And just get it out and tell me when you're done. And then just give me painkillers so I don't have to feel anything. And when it's all set, then I'll be happy again. Vedic psychology is the opposite. It's like wherever your pain point is, now we could have no Novocaine. We need to actually increase your awareness, because we need your very mind to go in to pull the samskara out. So how can you do it if you're drunk or high or in tamas or in rajas? You can't. So that's why I keep saying you have to sattvasize your senses. Those were the original classes I taught. You have to get yourself in that sattvic mode to even be able to see it, and see it with a little detachment, a little distance from what it is. So then you can go in like the loving parent who's going to take care of the emotional child. You know, that's the only way. So this work is not for the faint of heart at all. And as you do the work, one way you can tell that Vedic psychology is actually working on you and working for you, and not just an intellectual exercise where you're using it to analyze others, but when it's actually working, is you become truly more compassionate to whoever it is that's your worst enemy. It doesn't mean you go befriend them and you snuggle with a tiger. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying you actually can see that person is very wounded, because no healthy person would behave like that. Kamala?
So then, coming back to the answer I gave to the question, is like the first part I answered like, okay, I understand that this person has a problem and I'm not being involved so much. But then, seems that with this explanation that you have given, seems that this is also not, I mean, it's just like the castle fell in pieces because I wanted to make it better and to help and to give this compassion. So then my question is like, then this was not a real compassion?
No.
It was more like, I need to do
trauma
something.
Response. It's a trauma response.
Yeah.
From having an emotionally volatile parent.
Okay, and no boundary. Okay, then has become more clear.
Yeah. So the true compassion in this case, if a partner acts like that as an adult, the true compassion, if you're grounded in yourself and you're sattvic and you can see what's really happening, is that you remove.
You remove
You
yourself.
say, okay, I'm sorry that you can have empathy, kind of like, I'm sorry you're going through that, but that's not my responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll see you when you've taken care of yourself. Just like I don't want to wipe your butt either. I'm not your mommy and you're not too. So you wipe your own butt. And when you're ready to have a nice, pleasant meal together, give me a call. But until then, I don't want to. Wiping your butt is messy. What if he has diarrhea and he's like, can you wipe my bum bum? I'm sorry, but that's what it looks like when someone has an emotional outburst.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody's emotionally outbursting like that, it's like they had diarrhea all over the place, and then they're like, can you wipe it for me? And you're like, okay, yeah, out of compassion, let me wipe your bum bum, you know? That's why I say whenever someone's having an emotional outburst, it's like a accident or whatever, you know? It's like very rarely, unless you have an incontinent problem, do you wet your pants. But if you look at how many accidents you've had emotionally, it's happening every day. I mean, it's very rare to see people who are completely in smooth, harmonious relations with everyone, you know? Very rare. So then how many times you're peeing your pants and having diarrhea on somebody in a day? You know? We want to, you know, have the person feel like you've given them a rose, you know, and they're walking away feeling light, and it's fragrant because you haven't dumped your emotions on them and your opinions. You know? But you're also not a sponge absorbing all theirs either. And you won't know how to do it until you have to learn the techniques, but you have to always be in control and aware, a high sense of awareness of your own feelings, your own samskaras.
Question about this being alert. So the child, like in this case, Melania, she was all the time alert to try to see the signal, to try to detect the signal, to basically protect herself from the adults. So then, when this state of mind is like permanent, then what is the?
It's called hypervigilance.
Okay.
Hypervigilant.
Hypervigilant.
Yeah, you're always on high alert. You're always, watching,
Yeah.
for her, who's going to have the outburst, who's going to, whose emotions that I need to go caretake. So we want to change that. That's a good word you used, alert, because that's how it feels. You're on high alert as a kid. You become hypervigilant, and we want to change that alertness into awareness. So as an adult, the idea is awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Being aware not of them, being aware of your own feelings, your own needs.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's how you can unapologetically just say, no, sorry, I can't be there for that. Why? Because I have my own thing I'm taking care of.
Thank you.
Okay, Bhushan, you had a question or you wanted to share something?
I had a question, so it's related to Kamalaji's question right now. So, in a situation where one of the parent tells the child that this is not your fault, the other parent is crazy and has this problem, it's not their fault. But even then, the child may desire some love from the other parent, your parents, father, or mother, that they may not get because the other parent is sick, or if the other parent is like unhinged, screaming or shouting or something, then that may still create fear, even if the child knows other parent is crazy, right? So some samskara, correct me, is there a way to prevent this? Because it seems to be that unless both the parents are balanced, some samskara, bad samskara will enter the child. It's better than blaming oneself, but would it be correct to say that some negative samskara will enter the mind, even if they know that the parent is crazy?
Yeah, but see, the thing is that what's missing for the child is the buddhi, right? The sense of intelligence. That's one of the 4 parts of the mind in Vedic psychology, right? So the sense of intelligence, which is your discriminating faculty, the kid doesn't have it, right? So that's why the parent's job is to co-regulate and to educate. So one parent's crazy, just say, and the other parent is, supposed to hopefully teach them and say, which is the example I gave, So yes, the negative samskaras are going to go in if one of the parents is abusive or emotionally neglectful, whatever the thing is. So the other parent has to protect, educate, teach, co-regulate the feelings and help digest that samskara. So negative samskaras will go in, even if both parents are great. We don't live in some utopia. So the person at the coffee shop could be rude to the kid. The kid could get bullied at school, who knows? So negative samskaras are going to go in. But the whole idea is that since we know, if you understand Vedic psychology, the kid doesn't have the buddhi to digest it. So that's why the parent has to be highly attuned to the child. Asking how is your day, understanding what happened, noticing if dad's being rude. I mean, it doesn't even have to be that the dad has, or the mom or whoever has yelled abusive words. It could just be that they're absorbed in their own thing and they're ignoring the child. even one time. So negative samskaras are going to be in there, put in every day. But the part that's missing is the person to digest it. There has to be some healthy adult. And I know in Indian families, sometimes there's, they're living with, maybe there's a grandmother who's the healthy one. There's got to be somebody in there. And if you understand the system of how samskaras are made, then you would make a family and make sure that you have healthy people to help the children's brain development, the mind development, That there needs to be a digesting person there to help talk about their day, to help talk about what happened, to help talk about their fears, to help them see their nature, their svabhava. There's many things that need to happen in those beginning 7 years of teaching them the good things about themselves and also digesting the negative stuff that's coming in. It's almost like you could call it like an air purifier. Like here when they burn plastic, in the winter and things like that. But if you have the air purifier going, it's kind of purifying. So children need that. They need the air purifier person in their life to help digest and help them understand, that was not okay. So I guess what I'm saying is it's not necessarily the experience itself that's so damaging. It's not having the loving person in your life to help digest it. And to answer your question, yes, they're always going to want love from mom and dad. If someone's not helping them see it clearly, that dad can't give it, that dad has a problem, and I know you love him, you can love him, but you're probably trying to get something that he can't give, and you're probably thinking you have to do more than you should. So the parent would be there and say, of course it's your father. And one parent should never talk badly about the other one, especially to the kid. That sends a very confusing message to the kid. So you would want to say something positive, like, of course you love him, it's your father. And then you talk about his good qualities. He plays with you, or whatever the thing is he does. But, then you talk about the part where he hurt the child in a way that supports the child, but that doesn't smash the father. So you can help the child learn how to love kind of in the gray area, which is most relationships. Most people have like a good side and a bad side. So the adult's job is to protect the child from the hurtful or negative side of the parent that's being hurtful, and still love within a healthy boundary of the positive side. So it's an art. It's not so easy, but it's a good question. But the nature of the child, of course, is always going to want to love their parents, no matter how abusive. And actually, typically, the more abusive is, the more they'll defend their parents as an adult, unless it's digested as a kid. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Bhushan.
Thanks.
Okay. Can you read? Or?
Why is it such a problem if one parent talks badly about the other parent in front of the child?
Because the child's getting these samskaras, right, of learning how to operate in life, and just imagine it wasn't a bad thing. How do you think the child's going to act as an adult? Just say, I don't like you. I'm going to be like, no, Sri, this guy is such a jerk. He's such an idiot. You're getting programmed on how to operate in life in those first 7 years. So you shouldn't model that to a child. You shouldn't model that you trash the other person that you love in front of the child, number one. And number two, you two came together to make the child, and that child is made by both of you. So it literally feels like they're ripping your arms like that, and you're ripping you in half when they fight. Because you're made from both of them, and you love them both, no matter how bad they are. You love them both, and it feels devastating when they do that. Very devastating, confusing, overwhelming, because you want them to be together, and you'll do anything to try to make them together. So you shouldn't. The parents should never argue about each other, trash each other, criticize each other. They should be polite and kind and loving. And then, as a child, you learn that. This is how, even, they maybe don't, they're disagreeing on something, but they don't smoke the other person out in a way, expose the other person and make them look bad. That's also an adult thing. I mean, how can a child digest that my mom hates my dad? It will create a lot of anxiety, high anxiety for a child. If they're like, oh my God, my parents hate each other. They're not going to be able to sleep at night because they're going to try to think how they can make it better. And it's their fault. So now if I can get straight A's, if I can be the most perfect person, then maybe they'll get back together. because I know it's me, I caused the problem. That's how kids think. They don't understand. And then if mom and dad are doing that, then who's going to be the one to help the kid understand it? And then they feel like they get put in all these weird situations where they feel like they have to be the middle person between the two, and it's so stressful for their little brains trying to develop, you know. They're just trying to understand, you know, maybe how to tie their shoes, how to throw a ball, you know, how to eat with a fork and a knife or something, and then the parents are doing that. It's like very overwhelming for the whole system. So it's a boundary issue really at the end of the day. What kids should be exposed to and what they shouldn't. Okay? Anything else? Read a little? All right. Let's go back to our friend Melanie. Melanie was forced...
Dashikaji,
Yeah?
if I may confirm this, that what you said just means that the co-regulation and attunement is more important than just trying to protect the child from any possible negative samskara. I mean, that is also good, but co-regulation and this attunement is even more important.
Yeah.
Would that be a correct assessment of
Yeah.
what you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the negative we know are going to come. And actually, it's actually a little bit healthy. You know how they say, like, I don't know, there's different, you know, controversy on this, but like getting a flu vaccine, or if you get a virus, your system gets stronger when you've had that. It gets the antibodies. So it's kind of like, I'm not saying the kid should be abused, but having a negative samskara where like a kid teases them at school, or a kid steals their toy and they have to learn how to respond, that's good. That's how they learn. That's how they learn to be part of society. That's how they learn to not always get what they want. You know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. Like, there's a certain amount of kind of like negative experiences that every person should have in childhood. It's called actually getting socialized. That's how you learn how to be in a group and not be the center of the attention 24/7. And so it shouldn't be that, because some parents go over the top. You know, they call it the helicopter parent, the helicopter mom, who's just 24/7. You know, my kid can't even touch a germ, or my kid can't. It's like very over the top. So you have to let them breathe a little, let them live a little, let them stumble and fall and make mistakes, and then you're there and you're attuning, you're co-regulating, you're helping digest, you're educating in a way that at their level they can understand. You know. So that's the missing piece, and that's why by the time people come to therapy, it's time to have your story be fully heard, and then learn how to nurture your own inner child, your own story, and digest it. Okay. Ready? So Melanie was forced to be her father's caretaker. Both her parents placed their adult responsibilities squarely on her younger shoulders. At a time in her life when she needed a strong father to give her self-confidence, she found herself having to pamper an infantile father instead. Melanie's first and most profound emotional relationship with a man was with her father. As a child, she was overwhelmed by both her father's medicines and the guilt she felt when she couldn't satisfy his demands. She never stopped trying to make up for her inability to make him happy, even when he wasn't around. She just found substitute, needy, troubled men to take care of. Her choice of men was dictated by her need to assuage her guilt. And by choosing the father substitutes that she did, she perpetuated the emotional deprivation she had experienced as a child. I asked Melanie whether her mother had provided any of the love or attention that she never got from her father. My mother tried, but she was sick a lot of the time. She was always running to doctors and had to stay in bed when her colitis acted up. They'd prescribe tranquilizers and she'd eat them like popcorn. Oh God, she might have had an addiction problem. I guess she was pretty hooked. I don't know. She was always out of it. Our housekeeper really raised us. I mean, my mother was there, but she wasn't there. When I was about 13, I wrote that letter to Dear Abby. The damnedest thing was that my mother actually found it. You'd think she would have come to me and asked what I was so upset about. But I guess what I felt didn't matter to her. It was almost like I didn't exist. So the invisible child. Parents who focus their energies on their own physical and emotional survival send a very powerful message to their children. Your feelings are not important, and I'm the only one who counts. Many of these children, deprived of adequate time, attention, and care, they begin to feel invisible. as if they don't even exist. In order for children to develop a sense of self-worth, a sense that they do more than occupy space, that they matter and are important, they need their parents to validate their needs and feelings. Now, what I just read, Babaji underlined. You see, I don't know if you guys can see it, but he read this book cover to cover, and all of his notes are in here, all of the things that he underlined that he thought was important. So I'll read it again, the part that he highlighted here. In order for children to develop a sense of self-worth, a sense that they do more than occupy space, that they matter and are important, they need their parents to validate their needs and feelings. So that's so important, you guys. That's what we've been talking about, right? I'm calling it different words, but the idea of attuning to your inner child, of the co-regulating, of protecting the child, that's all what she's saying, attuning to the needs and the feelings. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of undigested samskaras, you know, and you're not going to feel safe in the world as an adult. There's all different kind of what we call defense mechanisms, ways to protect yourself from ever getting hurt again in those ways, you know. So this is really important. And the child feels basically invisible when the parents who focus their energies on their own physical and emotional survival send a very powerful message to their children. I'm just going to read it again. Your feelings are not important. I'm the only one who counts. So just think about this for a minute. I'm not trying to paint too dark of a picture, but just for a minute, just think how many of your parents, you know, really came to the table to have children, had worked through all their samskaras, were aware that they even had samskaras, and worked through it and came in a sattvic way and parented like a sattvic parent. My parents didn't, you know. They were full of samskaras, and so were their parents. So when you really think about it, how is it that any child really felt completely validated and visible, you could say, like really seen, you know? So many things I see when people are really feeling angry in their adult life is because they felt unseen. They feel unseen now. They're feeling so pissed off and they want to make their point, you know, because they're feeling unseen. And it doesn't have much to do with the person in front of you or the situation, actually. It's because you were not seen really very well by your parents. And they're bringing a whole ocean of samskaras, those parents that parented us. You know, so how is it that we think that we're coming to the table like really fully being seen, you know? And the best way you can tell of the areas where you're feeling invalidated in your life, unseen in your life, is wherever it is that you're not feeling peaceful. You're not feeling sattvic. You're not feeling even connected to someone else. I'm not saying connected like you want to be their best friend, but if there's somebody who you're like, ooh, I don't like that person, probably that they're triggering one of those really deep wounds in your childhood. I don't like the person or the thing, the topic, the, you know, like whatever it is that you're having some sort of aversion to. It's hovering over a sensitive spot for you. You know? So that's one way to see what samskaras we kind of inherited in a way from our parents. But one of the most common ones is the one she just highlighted, the invisible child. Because if you're triggered by your own stuff, how can you see somebody else? It's not possible. If you're completely in your own, just say you're completely anxious about something. Like for me, like I said, I have a needle phobia. So if I go to the hospital, I can't tell you much about who was around me and what their needs were. Because I'm just like, please give me something so I don't faint. Please help me just get through this moment. So before they put the needle, and then I'm like, don't show me the needle. Let me get out of here. I have a whole thing I have to do. I'm not in a sattvic conscious state where I'm noticing the nurse who took the blood or the person who was helping me or anything. I'm just like, get me out of here. I have a very high anxiety around that. So that's just my little mini example. But imagine now I'm trying to be a mother. I don't have any kids, but imagine I did. And I have this needle phobia. How am I going to, and then imagine my kids there. How am I going to, even in just that little scenario of 5 minutes, how am I going to attune to my child who maybe is like, Mommy, I'm hungry. And I'm like, huh? I won't even hear them. I'll just be like, I'm going to be sick. Don't bother me or whatever. That's just for a needle phobia, which is not that big of a deal in the big scheme of things. But some people have chronic anxiety. They're anxious. They're triggered most of the time. Some people have chronic depression. Some people have a chronic irritation, anger. Whatever the chronic thing you have, you're it's an imbalance, emotional imbalance. So how are you going to attune to another person? Truly be empathetic to another person? It's not possible. You know? So that's the story of most parents. They're all triggered up in their own stuff, whatever it is. And and then that's how we ended up inheriting whatever we inherited that we're trying to work through now. So it's a long chain of basically triggered people, emotionally triggered people who are doing their best to make it through. But once we see it like that, then we can understand why it's so hard to get out of, and we can maybe be more compassionate to ourselves as well, saying this is not a short-term, like a little fun hobby. This is how your psyche was made, how every thought and feeling and decision you're doing now and behavior is based on this program, these samskaras, So it's a little overwhelming when you think of it like that, but it's also empowering, because once you can see it, then you can be like, okay, like a surgeon, but thank God there's no knives in Vedic psychology. No knives and no needles, but we can go in there and cut it out with our buddhi, with our intelligence, and say, that part's toxic, it's not serving me, I want to cut it out. I'm going to cut that thing out by digesting it, by validating what my inner child went through. Okay. I saw Mohini had written something. Did you have a question, Mohini? Did she have a question, or do you want to ask it, Mohini? Oh. Okay.
We asked already.
Okay. That was Mohini's question. Okay. Okay. Good. So our invisible child that we talked about, and then I read Babaji's part. So after that it says, but Melanie's father's emotional needs were so overwhelming that he never noticed Melanie's needs. That's what I'm saying. Just think of some time when you're really emotionally triggered. Are you going to notice anyone around you? You're so overwhelmed by your samskara storm, we could call it. You're not going to notice. And if you're a parent, how are you going to parent that kid? That poor kid. She was there when he cried, but he did not reciprocate. Melanie knew that her mother had found her letter to Dear Abby, yet her mother never mentioned it to her. The message from both parents was loud and clear. She was a non-entity to them. She didn't even exist. Melanie learned to define herself in terms of their feelings instead of her own. If she made them feel good, then she was good. And if she made them feel bad, then she was bad. As a result, Melanie had a great deal of difficulty in her adult life defining her own identity, because her independent thoughts, feelings, and needs had never been encouraged. And so she truly had no idea who she was or what she should expect from a loving relationship. Unlike many adults whom I have worked, Melanie was already in touch with some of her anger and her parents when she came to me. Later we would focus and work through much of that anger and confront her deep feelings of emotional abandonment. She would learn to set limits on how much she would give of herself to others and to respect her own rights, needs, and feelings. She would learn to become visible. Now, this lady, doctor said again, but I don't know when she was ever visible in this lifetime. She was born to parents who didn't see her. So she said she's learned to become visible again. But anyway, so there's a lot, here in Melanie's story that's a very common theme I see in therapy, when I'm working with clients, this thing of not being seen, and then feeling like the logic that a small child without any, we could say, healthy caregiver to help them digest, the logic they make if the parent is not there for their emotional needs, like what happened with Melanie, is I must take care of your emotions in order to feel something, to feel that I exist even. I must take care of you. Maybe not your emotions. Maybe you're not being emotional like in this case. Maybe your needs. Whatever the thing is, I need to take care of you for me to feel like I exist. And that's just exhausting. Then you never actually get to kind of step into your power. This whole idea that, Babaji's been talking about svabhava, in a lot of the Bhagavad Gita classes, he's talking about that, right? What is your nature? That is a God-given gift. That is your superpower. So it was the Father's job to tell you that, to see that in you. And it's obvious. If you are a parent who's in sattva, you cannot miss it. Even if you've never heard of the word svabhava. You can be like, my kid's an artist, my kid's an athlete. You can see it. And then you should nurture that. But most parents, they can't even see past their own nose because they're so triggered. And triggered, it doesn't have to be emotionally obvious. Like I'm saying, it could be a workaholic. They're just so absorbed in their work. Or there's many reasons why they cannot be seeing you. But if they don't see your nature, your svabhava, and they don't see your feelings, and they don't even see when you're writing a letter to Dear Abby that's probably very hurtful to them, and they don't even acknowledge that, how do you think the kid's going to turn out? I mean, I ended up getting kids like that, as my patients when I worked at that psychiatric hospital I've talked to you guys about. And you know how they turn out? They're trying to kill themselves. Because maybe they'll get mom and dad's attention at that point. So when they come to the session, they have cuts all up their arm. And they have marks on their neck from trying to hang themselves. And they're taking little pieces of glass like this. You can't even keep your glasses around them because they'll take it and they'll break it and they'll cut themselves. And then if you show, oh my God, that's so sad, then they go, ooh, somebody has a feeling for me. I'll do it again. But if they cut themselves here, what I learned is these are often, if they're doing it here, this is visible. So they're doing it, they're saying, help me. If they do it here on the inside of the thigh, the private part, that's more like I'm really just trying to release pain. Because when they're bleeding, it feels so good. And I'm like, why does it feel good? And they tell me, because I can feel something. I feel so invisible. I feel so invisible that unless I cut myself, I don't feel anything. And I get a reaction from people when I cut. That's to the extent it can go. And there's many, many, many other ways people are, who have been made to feel invisible in their childhood are trying to get attention as adults. Because if you see yourself and you see your goodness and your greatness and your beautiful qualities that are given to you by God so you can do some wonderful things in your life, if you could see those and you could believe in those and you don't need anybody else to tell you that about yourself, why? Because for 18 years your mom and dad saw it in you and they nurtured you like watering a seed that turned into a nice strong tree. You don't need them to come and be like, yay, you're good at this, or yay, you're good at that. You don't need to do anything. You're just growing because you've been growing for 18 years in that way. But because most people were made to feel invisible, like their needs don't matter, their feelings don't matter, they don't even know who they are, then they come into the world and they have to make an impact somehow. And it's a desperate attempt to be seen, because if you feel invisible, then that basically means like you're dead. So people will do so many different things to get attention, coming from a very hurt, wounded inner child place, And we're all doing it, it's just different ways. So you can also, once you figure out what your svabhava is, you can see, am I doing my svabhava in sattva? Meaning I'm aware of my samskaras, I'm taking care of my inner child, and I'm really at my best? Or am I doing my svabhava in tamas? In other words, I'm basically doing it in some way to get attention or get my needs met, kind of, because your svabhava is your svabhava, you're not going to get out of it. So whatever it is, you better figure out what it is and see which way you're doing it. Because it could come out in really not nice ways if you're not in sattva. But most of us don't even know what it is. We're not even sure. We're like, well, I could be this or I could be that, But if your parents were there in your life, you'd probably know by 5 or 7 for sure. Because they saw it, they nurtured you in it, they're celebrating it with you. Most likely they also have a similar svabhava. That's an interesting one too. Like oftentimes your parents, if you're not adopted, but if you were born from those parents, you're going to have something similar to their svabhava. How are you not, So that's another thing is like, in my family, I'm a therapist and a teacher. That's the main things I do, right? My dad was also like that. So I'm not like doing something so different. My mom was more like the therapist type and my dad was the teacher. So what am I doing? That combination. But oftentimes, because your parents don't help you see your svabhava, you have no background, for example, in teaching. But you think you're the teacher, It might be that your father was working at McDonald's and you grew up like that, and then now you think you're the guru type, So I've seen that. Because you're so confused about your svabhava and you have no idea who you are. So what you do is you watch somebody else who's fixed in their svabhava and you think you're that. You're like, oh, that person, yeah, I've known them for a while. I've seen their trajectory. I think I'm like that. You should look at your parents, because most likely you're something similar to them, even if they didn't fully actualize their svabhava. Once you can see what they are, if they had that, just say that like one of your parents wasn't an artist, but you could tell, like on their hobby, whenever they had time, they were doing art. Then that's probably, maybe you got that one, Or if they were very good at figuring out problems, but they're just a householder, but they're very logical. then you might get that. You might have gotten that, but you should study that. Because it's not like, most people are very confused about what they are, and they can't even answer the survey right. You're answering your survey from who you think you are, which is probably tamas, and you're not seeing clearly. So it's very important to study your family too. Who made you? Who are they? What's their svabhava? Are they in tamas? Are they in rajas? Are they in sattva? How did they show up in life? What was their nature? Look at your siblings. Then it helps you get a little more grounded in your svabhava, because so many people I've seen are like really off at what they're saying their svabhava is. They're like off base because they have no idea, and they're answering how they want to be. I want to be like this, so I'm going to answer like, oh yeah, I would do that. Probably they've taken a lot of Vedic psychology classes, and they're like, oh, that sounds good for me. Yeah, I could see myself like that, but that's not your svabhava. Especially if you're, getting older and you don't know your svabhava, and now at this age you're trying to do it. You would have done it by now. So also analyze your life. Look at what you've been doing your whole life. I mean, I've been teaching since I was 2. When I was 2, I was teaching that's when I started teaching my parents. When I was 2. I was talking by 1. I was teaching them by 2. I was wrong. I didn't know what I was talking about, but they thought it was funny. And then, by 3, I was trying to teach my father, who was a professor at Dartmouth College, the alphabet. And I didn't know the alphabet, but I kind of knew the letters. So I'd be like, A, N, L, P, Z. And they're like, oh my God. And I was like, sit down, you're my students, So that's my svabhava, and that was his svabhava. He was a teacher, I'm a teacher, so that's the nature. So once you study your family and you say, oh, I've actually been doing this my whole life. What is the thing you've been doing? What's that thread? And you can also study the 18 svabhavas we have without taking the test. Just look at them and see what resonates with you. Not what you want to be. Look at your history. What has been the thread through your whole life? That's your svabhava. What's the thing, even when you're sick, that you want to do, that you can't help but do? That you're just doing anyway. Like, no matter how busy you are, you have to do that thing. So it's important because most likely our parents didn't know their nature, so they couldn't see our nature. And now we're going through life, I don't know who I am, how I feel, what I need, what I think, anything. And then that's why all these crashes keep happening in relationships. But once you see like really clearly who you are through a very good self-study, and then you align yourself with doing activities related to your nature, then you've already reparented yourself in a very significant way. Then you have a good foundation. I'm like this. So then you can at least stop forcing yourself to be someone you're not, and stop competing with people who you kind of idolize or you look up to or you're trying to compete with, depending on the type of nature you have. But it's not your svabhava, Because once you get aligned with yours, life becomes like very easy and flowing and you feel happy. So that alone can really set you free in a lot of ways. And that's a real disservice our parents did, but like I said, they didn't know theirs either. And most of them just want you to be something that makes them look good. So be an engineer, be a doctor, be whatever it is, so you can make me look good and make me proud. But we can do a much deeper dive now with the tools and knowledge Babaji's given us with all this information, And then we can have some real fun. Okay? So thank you guys for being here.